Hello, folks. It's me again, Amanda Enderman, your trusty tour guide in the wonders of the wonderful city, also known as Rio de Janeiro. And on this video, I'm going to talk about an event which actually was no smaller than the 3-day celebrations that we just had in order to celebrate the 200th anniversary of our independence, and as a matter of fact, which also lasted 3 days, which was none other than the proclamation of Don João VI as king. By the way, oh my goodness, and boy was it a mega event, and back in the early 1800s, mind you. But before I go right into the theme of the video, I have to remind you once again that I'm offering presential tours right here in Rio, and the tours are listed and described on my website, which I will leave the link in the description box below and in the first fixed comment. So if you would like to have a tour with yours truly, visiting some of the wonders of the wonderful city, which are available on the website, be sure to click here, text me on WhatsApp, make a reservation, and I'll be glad to show you the wonders of the wonderful city myself in person. But now that this commercial break is done, let's hop on to the theme of the video without further ado, because we have 3 days of partying to go through. Oh my goodness. No wonder I'm dressed like I'm going to a party, hey? Appropriate, right? So, the 3 days started in February 6th, 1818. However, Don João VI in practice already ruled since March 20th, 1816, because you see, his mother, Mad Queen Mary or Pious Queen Mary, depending if you're Portuguese or Brazilian, had died. So automatically, as normally happens, he became king. However, he was not officially proclaimed as king. There was no ceremonial event until February 6th, 1818. And you may be wondering, but Amanda, why so long? Why did he postpone it for so long? Well, there were a number of reasons. One of them was that he had elevated Brazil in 1815 to the category of United Kingdom with Portugal and the Algarve. And in the opinion of the courts in Portugal, this was a big no-no. And on top of that, there was no sign that he would actually return to Portugal. So there was a lot of pressure already, because at this point Napoleon had already been defeated, but there was a lot of pressure for him to go back to Portugal. By the way, for those of you who have just arrived on this channel and you're basically lost, I'm gonna leave the link for the video which I talked about the coming of the Portuguese court to Brazil, and that ought to situate you. So I will leave the links up here so you can check those out after you've watched this video. So it also can be said that he was postponing it as a diplomatic solution, waiting for people to calm down a bit, because he was divided between the courts wanting him to go back to Portugal so that he could be proclaimed as king, because of course it was a tradition for a Portuguese king not to be proclaimed in a colony. There was also a big no-no. The king is supposed to be proclaimed as king in Portugal. Tradition! And it was unacceptable for him not to be proclaimed in Lisbon. Definitely. But also, there was an event here which contributed for him to postpone the party. Actually, not only one, but two events. A good one and a bad one. I'm gonna start right with the bad one so that we can be rid of it, just like when you have good news and bad news. So the bad event was the revolution of Pernambuco, which happened in 1817. But, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting our slide presentation, of course. So here is the flag of Brazil as the United Kingdom with Portugal and the Algarve that you can see over here. And here is a painting depicting the revolution in Pernambuco. So you may be thinking,
Why did this revolution occur?
the thing is that ever since the Portuguese court came here with Dom João VI, Pernambuco, which was one of the most prosperous divisions ever since colonial times, was forced to send money to Rio in order to fund the coming of the court here and the staying of the court here as well. And all of this was delaying, they were unable to pay their soldiers from Pernambuco, and as a result, it became difficult to solve local problems that would occur time and again. So imagine having no police force or it being difficult to pay your local police force. So, of course, Pernambuco did not like that at all. And some even say that the revolution was fueled by Enlightenment ideas, which the Freemasons of the place and their lodges were putting in people's heads, some say. Talk about gossip, which we always love. Anyways, the good event was nothing short of the wedding of his son Dom Pedro I and future Empress Leopoldine, which I talked about her in the previous video that I made about the Austrian mission. And this is why I brought you this painting by Jean-Baptiste Debré. And this isn't actually of their wedding, but it is of him receiving her as soon as she arrived, shall we say. However, the reason why I chose this painting and not a painting of the actual wedding is because you can see here that he was a genius. It was as if he was painting or he took a snapshot right at the moment that they were talking to each other, discussing God only knows what. So it makes the person who is looking at the painting curious as to what could they be talking about right before they got married. They were just getting to know each other. So all the more reason for him to depict them, talking to each other. What do you like? Oh, I like that too. We could do something. We could go out. We could go to such and such place. Like a couple just getting to know each other. So cute. And of course, their wedding was held at this church over here, which is the church of Nossa Senhora do Carmo da Antiga Sé, which exists to this day in Rio. And remember the presential tours that I told you that I'm offering? One of them is a tour all with historic churches, and this church here is included in the tour. So if you would like to see personally the inside of this church, look at this, you can book this tour with me and I'll be happy to take you there in person, of course. And you may be wondering why I'm saying proclamation instead of coronation. Well, because normally a coronation involves putting the crown on the head of the new monarch, the coronation of now King Charles III. Those of you who are Brits that might be watching, I believe it's about to happen, but if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comment section. News takes a while to get here. Pardon me if I got that mixed up. We just heard of the burial of Queen Elizabeth II, but the coronation of now King Charles III, we haven't received news of it yet, so let me know in the comment section below if it already happened or if it's just about to happen. So, in Portugal, ever since the restoration of the Braganza dynasty, it's not done. No Portuguese monarch ever since Dom João IV has had the crown placed on his or her head. And I mentioned this in the video I did about historic flags of Brazil. And incidentally, I did not show the flag that I showed you before in that video. So the reason for that is that ever since then, the miracle of the restoration of the Braganza court is attributed to Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. Yes, the Virgin Mary herself. No monarch receives or appears with the crown on his or her head. This is why you can see that Dom João VI appears here in his official portrait as king with the crown on the table. The crown isn't on his head. He's holding what seems to be the scepter, of course, but the crown is on the table. It's not on his head. And some monarchs opted to be painted holding the crown like this, like you would hold bread or something. But some, like him, opted for the crown to be on a table, and some would even put their hands slightly above the crown, but never on the head. This is why, when it comes to Portuguese kings and queens, you talk about a proclamation and not a coronation. And normally, In Portugal, it was a very simple affair. It wasn't elaborate at all. It was basically what was done with both Queen Elizabeth I of England, for example, and Queen Victoria as soon as the king or queen before them died. Just to name the example of Queen Victoria, and you can see that in the movie The Young Victoria, they woke her up right after King William died, and they just told her the king is dead, God save the queen. That is the proclamation normally. And so in Portugal, since there is no coronation, it was just a simple naming of the king. However, in Portugal, at least before the restoration, there was a ritual for that. But in Brazil, there wasn't. We were always just another colony. Why would there be? But celebrate it, we did, and for 3 days in a row. So let us roll out the celebration wagon now, shall we? Because it's 3 days of party that we have to unravel. Oh my goodness. The place chosen for this was the square in front of the Paço Imperial, which I have already shown you in previous videos. A balcony was built especially for the event so that the people who were outside the palace could see when the king came out. And also, minstrels played instruments such as, oh my goodness, the name in English escapes me now. I will probably have it written down here when I edit this video, but it's this instrument over here, one of them, wait a second, which in Portuguese is called charamela, and it sounds kind of like a flute. If you would imitate a flute with a more nasal sound, like, but I'm not gonna murder the sound. Instead, I'm gonna leave a link also in the description box below of a video in which a guy is actually playing this instrument, which he was able to resurrect, and that I could understand. This channel is of a group of music players from Portugal which are resurrecting old instruments from the Renaissance and the Middle Ages. So if you like their channel, be sure to subscribe there as well, because it's quite a small channel just like my own, but let's reward them for such a feat of resurrecting these historic instruments. And also drums were played and trumpets. And also, Grandjean de Montigny, I mentioned him in the video about the French artistic mission, erected a temple in honor of the goddess Minerva, which is the Roman goddess of wisdom, the correspondent of Athena in Greek mythology, which was similar to what you see engraved in this medal over here, which was made in honor of the proclamation of Don João VI as king. By the way, before I forget, he was proclaimed, of course, as king of the United Kingdom of Brazil, Portugal, and the Algarves. Very important. And this temple had an image of the goddess Minerva and an image of the king himself. And also, a triumph arch was designed by Tonnet, which was also an artist of the French artistic mission, and as you can see here, depicted by Debray. And each side of this arch had Corinthian columns with statues of the goddesses Minerva, which, as I said before, is the goddess of wisdom, and Ceres, which is the goddess of agriculture, the correspondent of Demeter in Greek mythology. And this was supposed to symbolize both the wisdom of the newly proclaimed king, as well as the richness of the land in terms of agriculture. And also an obelisk, which was more than 20 meters high, was erected in the middle of the square. And well, for those of you who don't use the metric system, mind you, this was only the decoration for the event. We haven't yet begun the ceremony itself. So, the ceremony began on the morning of February 6th with the king coming down this balcony and going to the royal chapel. And what was the royal chapel? The chapel that I showed you before. This one over here. The same church in which Dom Pedro married Princess Leopoldine. So he went there, and later he came back inside the palace, where he walked to the throne, where he received a golden scepter which very likely is this that he is holding in this painting. And this is when he started pronouncing his oath, which was as follows, roughly translating. Of course. I swear and I promise, with the grace of God, to rule over thee, to govern well, and administer justice to you directly, as much as the human weakness allows, and to preserve your good customs, privileges, graces, honors, freedom, and honesties, which by the kings that have come before me have been given and confirmed. And of course, I was reading because I'm never going to memorize this. I'm sure he read it himself. So don't judge me for reading. And right after the oath, his sons, Dom Pedro and Dom Miguel, which are these two young men over here, accompanied by all the nobles of the kingdom, swore fealty to the king. And then a ceremony which was quite unique of Portugal and Brazil began, which is called the kissing of the hand. This, which is depicted in this painting, where all of the court would literally get in line in order to kiss the hands of Dom João VI and then of Dona Carlota Joaquina, which in this painting is sitting beside the king, obviously. And also he went back to the chapel in order to hear, the choir singing in honor of him and etc. Then Dom João VI came once again on the balcony that I showed you before, dressing an outfit which was embroidered in gold and crimson velvet with a feathered hat. So this concluded the first day of the whole thing. That's only the first day. In the second day, all of the events were right over here, basically in this red circle in the middle, which is the Campo de Santana, which is in the center of Rio. But back then, you had this stage where you even had bullfighting, just like in Spain. You have to this day, and in Portugal as well. So the king and the court watched the events from a palace which was built in the Campo de Santana, which nowadays is a public park. And there were military parades, bullfighting, dances, allegories, and reading of poetry. So you can see it was quite another big event. For this day, that was it. However, on the third day, there were fireworks which wrote in the sky, Viva el Rei, which means hurrah for the king. And in this occasion, in order to show how merciful he was, Dom João VI pardoned various people who were accused of treason because of the revolution in Pernambuco, remember, that I spoke of previously. He granted retirement for old public servants and seniority to the members of the Senate and the royal courts of Rio. With this, my friends, I declare concluded this video about the proclamation of Dom João VI as king. And if you've just arrived in this channel, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and most important of all, share this video with as many people as you possibly can so that each time more people may know of the wonders of the wonderful city. And as usual in this channel, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!